Let me tell you about the most expensive mistake in retail history. In 2012, JCPenney's new CEO, Ron Johnson, the guy who built the Apple Store, so not exactly an amateur, he walks in and says, you know what? All these fake prices, all these markdowns, the original price $50, now $25 thing, it's dishonest. Customers are smarter than that. Let's just give them fair prices. So he kills all coupons, kills the sales events, rolls out what he calls fair and square pricing. Honest, straightforward prices. No games. And here's what happened. Sales dropped over 25%. JCPenney lost $985 million in a single year. Same store sales fell nearly 32% in one quarter alone. Analysts called it the worst quarter in retail history. Johnson was fired in 17 months. Now, think about that. He gave people better prices, lower prices than they were actually paying before, and they stopped buying. Why? Because he removed something invisible, something most people don't even know exists. He removed the anchor. And once you understand what an anchor really is and how it works, you'll never set a price tag or build a pricing page the same way again. Today, we're breaking down the anchoring effect, how anchoring works in buyers' brains, even when they know it's happening. Then we'll walk through two companies that used it brilliantly, one that nearly doubled sales of a product that was flopping, and another that turned a $300,000 purchase into an impulse buy. We'll look at the original academic study behind the anchoring effect, the one that launched an entire field of research. And then at the end, we'll give you 3 specific ways to use anchoring in your marketing strategy. Okay, so what is anchoring? In the most simple terms, the first number a person sees becomes the lens through which they judge every number after it. That first number is the anchor, and the human brain clings to it like a life raft, even when it has absolutely nothing to do with the decision the person is making. Think about that for a second. Even when the number is irrelevant, it still pulls a person's judgment towards it. Now, it sounds almost too simple, right? Like your customers would see right through it. They don't. Nobody does. We all fall for it every single day. And I'll prove it to you in a minute with a study that will kind of blow your mind. But first, let's go back to the JCPenney story we opened with in this episode just for a second, just to make sure you feel this. When customers used to walk into JCPenney and see a jacket tagged originally $50, now $25, they weren't really evaluating whether that jacket was worth $25. They were evaluating it against $50, and $50 was the anchor. It gave the $25 meaning. It made $25 feel like winning. Take away the $50, now it's just a $25 jacket. No thrill, no deal, no story to tell a friend about getting half off. The customer felt nothing. JCPenney's COO actually admitted this afterwards. He said, "We didn't realize how deep some of the customers were into coupons." And Ron Johnson himself called coupons a drug. He was right about that. He just didn't realize that you can't take customers off the drug without replacing it with something. The anchor was the product. Remove it, and the entire purchase psychology collapsed. That's what makes anchoring so powerful and so dangerous if you ignore it. It's not about the price. It's about the context around the price. And as marketers, that context is ours to set. Okay, now let me show you the flip side. A company that figured this out almost by accident. And it's one of my favorite old school business stories. In the early 1990s, Williams-Sonoma introduced one of the first home bread makers, priced at $275, and nobody bought it. Which makes sense when you think about the buyer psychology. This was a brand new product category. No one ever owned a bread maker before, so when a customer saw $275, they had no frame of reference. Was that a good deal? A ripoff? They had no idea. There was nothing to compare it to. No anchor. So, Williams-Sonoma hires a consulting firm, and the consultants come back with advice that sounds almost stupid. Make another bread maker, make it a little bit better, and price it at $429. That's it. That was the whole strategy. And here's what happened. Sales of the original $275 bread maker nearly doubled almost overnight. The $429 model barely sold, but it was never supposed to. Its entire job was to be the anchor. Suddenly, customers had a reference point. They could walk in and think, well, I'm obviously not paying $429 for a bread maker, but $275 for a machine that's almost as good, that's actually a pretty solid deal. Same product, same price, completely different perception. The only thing that changed was the number sitting next to it. Now, if that sounds familiar, Steve Jobs did a version of this in 2010 when he launched the iPad. He puts $999 on the screen, lets it sit there while he talks, then drops it to $499, and the crowd literally gasps. Same principle. He gave the room an anchor, then made the real price feel like a gift. Buyers didn't evaluate whether they needed an iPad. They were too busy calculating how much they were saving. The lesson for us marketers? Customers can't judge a price in a vacuum. They need a reference point, and if we don't give them one, their brain will go looking for one on its own. Here's another great example of the anchoring effect in action. Rolls-Royce, the car company, stopped exhibiting at car shows. A car company that stopped going to car shows. Instead, they started showing their cars at yacht and private jet exhibitions. Why? Rory Sutherland, the vice chairman of Ogilvy, explains it perfectly. He says, if you're looking at Learjets all afternoon, a $300,000 car is an impulse buy. It's like putting sweets next to the counter. That's anchoring at its most elegant. They didn't change the car. They didn't change the price. They didn't change a single feature. They just changed what it was sitting next to. They changed the buyer's anchor. When a Rolls-Royce is parked next to a $60,000 BMW at a car show, the buyer feels the weight of that $3,000 price tag. It seems outrageous, but park it next to a $10 million jet, now that same $300,000 feels like a rounding error. The buyer's entire perception shifts, not because the product changed, but because the context did. That's the kind of thinking that separates good marketing from great marketing. It's not always about what you put on the price tag. Sometimes it's about what you put next to the price tag. All right, let's look at the science behind all of this, because this isn't just something marketers stumbled onto. This goes back to one of the most famous experiments in behavioral science. It's 1974. Two psychologists named Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman would later go on to win the Nobel Prize. They run this experiment. They bring people into a room and they have a wheel of fortune, like a carnival. Numbers from 0 to 100, except it's rigged. It only lands on 10 or 65, but participants don't know that. The wheel spins, lands on a number, and then the researchers ask a simple question. What percentage of African countries are members of the United Nations? Is it higher or lower than the number you just saw? And then they ask, what's your actual estimate? Now, just pause here for a second. The number on the wheel has nothing to do with the United Nations. It's a random number from a carnival game. It should be completely irrelevant to anyone's answer, but it wasn't. People who saw the wheel land on 10, their average estimate was 25%. People who saw 65, their average was 45%. A completely meaningless random number shifted people's answers by 20 percentage points. That's anchoring. The brain grabs the first number it sees, any number, and adjusts from there. But here's the kicker. It doesn't adjust enough. Tversky and Kahneman called it insufficient adjustment. People start at the anchor and move away from it, but they stop too soon. The brain basically says, that's probably close enough, and it isn't. Now, here's the part that really matters for us marketers. Later studies found this effect holds up even when the people are warned about it. Researchers told participants, hey, the number you're about to see is random and irrelevant. Didn't matter. The anchor still worked. That's how deep this goes. Buyers aren't choosing to anchor. They can't help it. It's baked into how the human brain processes numbers. which means the question isn't whether your customers are being anchored. They are. The question is whether you're the one setting that anchor or someone else is. The study was published in the Journal of Science in 1974, one of the most cited papers in all of psychology. Check the full citation in the show notes. Okay, here's what you came for. 3 ways to put anchoring to work in your marketing. And I'm going to be specific because use anchoring isn't a strategy. There are things you can implement. Number 1, show the stack, not just the price. This is something I see marketers get wrong constantly, especially in SaaS and services. You put a price on your landing page, let's say it's $97 a month, and you just leave it there, naked, no context. And then you wonder why visitors bounce? Instead, stack the value above the price. List out every single thing the customer gets, the software, the templates, the support, the training, and put a dollar value next to each one. CRM suite, $49 value. Email automation, $39 value. Weekly coaching calls, $200 value. Total value, $485 per month. Then underneath that, your price, $97 a month. Now your buyer is anchored at $485. $97 doesn't feel like it costs that much to them. It feels like they're stealing a deal. And I'm not saying inflate things dishonestly. Every number in the stack should be defensible. What would those features actually cost a buyer separately? Use real market prices, but give the buyer the anchor. Don't make them guess, because if they guess, they're almost always going to anchor lower than you want. Number 2, lead with your highest priced option. Always. On your pricing page, put enterprise on the left. In a proposal, open it with full scope premium package. In a sales call, pitch the big number first. Here's why this works on buyers. If a prospect sees $25,000 first, and then you show them a $10,000 option, $10,000 feels reasonable to them, almost modest. But if you lead with $10,000, that becomes the anchor in their head. And now $25,000 feels like a slap in the face. Same numbers, completely different emotional reaction from the buyer. HubSpot does this brilliantly. Their enterprise tier, $3,600 a month. It's the first thing a visitor sees on the pricing page. And suddenly the professional plan at $890 a month looks like the smart, sensible choice. That's not an accident. That's anchoring by design. Go look at your pricing page right now. Which number does your buyer see first? Because that number, whatever it is, becomes the ruler they measure everything else against. And I see this exactly opposite of almost all SaaS pages. Surf around the internet and take a look for yourself after this episode. Number 3, anchor against the cost of the problem, not the cost of your product. This is my favorite because almost nobody does it, and it's the most powerful version of anchoring there is. Instead of anchoring the buyer against a higher price, anchor them against the cost of not buying. Let's say you sell HR software. Don't lead with $500 a month. Lead with the average cost of replacing a single employee is $15,000. Companies with high turnover lose over $100,000 a year in recruiting and training costs alone. Now show the buyer your price, $500 a month. Just went from feeling like an expense to feeling like insurance. It's less than the cost of losing one person. The buyer's brain does the math automatically, and you set the terms of that math. Cybersecurity companies do the same thing all the time. The average data breach costs $4.45 million. Now their $20,000 annual plan feels like pocket change to the buyer. Find your customer's pain, quantify it, and put a number in front of them before they see your price. That painful number becomes the anchor, and your price becomes the relief. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Every price exists in context. And if you don't sell that context to your buyers, if you don't choose the anchor, their brain will find one on its own. Maybe it's a competitor's price. Maybe it's just a gut feeling that your product seems expensive. That's not a conversation you want a buyer having with themselves. Williams-Sonoma figured this out with the bread maker in the 90s. Couldn't move a single product at $275 till they put $429 product next to it. Same store, same customers, completely different result. Rolls-Royce figured it out by leaving car shows and parking next to jets. And JCPenney learned it the hardest way possible, by stripping out the anchors and watching nearly $1 billion walk out the door. The first number always wins. Make sure your buyers see yours first. Your marketing move.